The United States travel to Europe for a pair of friendlies against two top 10 FIFA-ranked nations in England and Spain. The reigning European champions, England, they snapped the United States' 13-game winning streak, defeating the Americans 2-1. After multiple VAR reviews, a penalty kick, a goal called back, and so much more happening. Plus, the U.S. are still preparing for a match against number 8 ranked Spain. What the team needs to do to take on the Spain team after going up against the Lionesses. We're here to chat all about this and so much more in today's USWNT show. Like this video and subscribe to Attacking Third YouTube page right now to join the conversation in the chat because we want to hear from you. Welcome into the USWNT Hour show. I'm your host, Lisa Roman, joined by CBSSports.com writer for U.S. Women's National Team and NWSL, Sandra Herrera, and two former U.S. internationals, Danielle Slaton and Lori Lindsey. We are so happy to have everyone here with us. You can join us live on youtube.com/Attacking Third, and you can listen to all of the USWNT Hour shows on the Attacking Third podcast. Download and follow Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all the places that you listen to your podcasts. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Sandra, I just saw you this morning. It's great to be back with you. But Lori, Danielle, welcome in again. Lori, it's been a minute. How are you? I haven't been on here with you in a while. How are you?
Yeah. I mean, well, as good as can be given everything that's going on in women's soccer, but good to see everybody. And like you just saw Sandra, I just saw Dee earlier today. So good to see you again.
Yeah, happy to be here and good to see your faces again. It has been a minute.
It certainly has, but we're happy to be here and live with everyone on YouTube. I have a $100 Paramount Plus gift card to give away during this live. Subscribe to Attacking Third on YouTube, like this video, and drop your social media handle without the @ symbol in the chat for a chance to win a $100 Paramount Plus gift card. We have a lot to talk about today, so we're going to get right into it. A pair of friendlies that the U.S. competed in, one against England. We're going to recap that and preview the match that the U.S. will play tomorrow against Spain. And we're also going to talk about the latest in the independent investigation by Sally Yates and the results that came out of that. Let's just start right with that because Sandra and I, you and I have talked a lot about it with Attacking Third, but now that we have former U.S. internationals here, I really want to pick their brains on this. So with everything that came out with the investigation results, kind of how everything went down with this, the findings from the investigation led by former Attorney General Sally Yates, revealing that the NWSL failed to provide a safe environment for players and repeatedly ignored these players' allegations of abuse and inappropriate behavior by coaches over so many years. It's devastating, it's heartbreaking, and it's so frustrating. But Danielle, I want to start with you on this. What was your reaction to these results that came out from this independent investigation?
The same that you just said, and the same that I think so many of us are experiencing, right? It's devastating, it's heartbreaking, it's gut-wrenching, and it's a lot to process in a short time. And I think the important things for us to take away, at least where I'm trying to get to, is how do we make it better? How do we make it right? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And how do we continue to provide voice for our players, whether they are, young, medium, old, and everywhere in between, and what our role is in making it a better, safer place going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly. I feel the exact same way. I mean, Danielle said it best, and I think there's been a lot of us former players too in communication, right, and checking in on one another as well, and what we can continue to do more. And going forward to exactly what Danielle said, continue to work to ensure this never happens again.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of different players and NWSL clubs and even sponsorship of clubs releasing statements about this. Sandra, is this the response from players and clubs and sponsorships that you expected after this fallout, or what were you expecting after these results?
I'll be frank. No, I wasn't expecting that. I think that we've been navigating in a space where we've seen players used to being handed, the bare minimum of things and being told to, put your head down, punch your clock and play. So I am a little surprised at some of the more of the like direct action that we've been seeing from certain franchises and from certain sponsorships of those franchises and of the league. I'll say pleasantly surprised, because I was anticipating that this was, with everything that came out, that it could have potentially been, just another thing that people didn't want to focus on, just one of those things where it's like, oh, well, that's very sad. That's very sad, but, got to move on. So there's a part of me that's a bit of a mixed bag. Still processing those very terrible things while also, trying to maintain a bit of hope in some of the things that we've been seeing. I think a lot of people are trying to do their best and sort of, similar to last year, take the lead of the players, right? And sort of see how they're reacting to it as well, and sort of taking the lead from them. So to hear sponsors and partners saying that they want to divest their sponsorship funds directly to the Players Association, I think is very promising. But I think there's still a layer of that accountability factor that I think that folks are also still looking for in the meantime. So
yes, some of those sponsors, Alaska Air, Sherwin-Williams, GE Appliances, saying that they were going to reallocate their funds directly to the Players Association to support the Players National Emergency Trust. And there will be more to come, right? There's continuously reactions coming from this, but one of the very first to put out a statement following the investigation results was U.S. Soccer. And one of the things that they mentioned in this is that they created a brand new committee of the board of directors to, quote, comprehensively address the report's recommendations going forward. Because in the Sally Yates report, there were a number of recommendations listed for what U.S. Soccer and the NWSL could do. A number of those statements listed out there, and players can, or excuse me, anyone can go read that and that investigation. But the committee was said from U.S. Soccer to be working with the leadership team to determine appropriate plan to act upon the recommendations laid out in the report. And some of the people named to this, Danielle, Slaton, you are named the chair of this committee alongside CEO Mike Kalina, and Lori Lindsey. You're also on this committee along with 3 other members. So I want to ask you two, what is your role on this committee? I mean, Danielle is chair, and then Lori as someone on this committee. And how did this come about for under U.S. Soccer?
Yeah. Well, as we all read the Yates report, and there were 12 major recommendations that came from Yates and her law firm that U.S. Soccer was to review, overlook, and ultimately the recommendations that she hoped that the Federation would implement. That 12th recommendation was figuring out some kind of implementation plan, whether it's by committee or task force or whatever needs to be. And so that committee got put in place immediately. There are 6 of us. Is that right, Lori? 6 of us, 6 or 7 of us on that committee. And our job is to take the words that come from this report and actually figure out how to implement that strategy. We actually just had our first meeting today, so we are moving and shaking, and it is a lot to tackle. Our primary responsibility is going to be focusing on the recommendations that came from this report. We know that there's a lot outside of the scope of the report. We know the NWSL and the PA still have their investigation, and they're going to come out with more information. But once you know what you know, you got to go, and we're not waiting around for anything else. And so we are going to start to tackle some of these recommendations. And ultimately, we'll tackle all of them, address all of them, move on all of them. We know things are going to come up that are outside of the scope of what Sally Yates and her team recommended. And U.S. Soccer is also putting together a task force to kind of, okay, great, this isn't in the initial report, but here's the other stuff that's coming up that we need to address to make our sport a better and safer place. And so there is a ton of people who are focused on this. Priorities are getting shifted as a result of this. And this is something that is the highest priority in U.S. Soccer. And we are dedicated to not just making statements, right? Like the statements, okay, great. love it. It's a good start, but this is about not just writing policy or changing code of conduct, but it's about doing those things and then following through with implementation, with action, with compliance, putting resources to the things that need to be done, and really ensuring that from, our professional level down to our youth level, that our players are safe. And that's what the small job that we have ahead of us, but are I guess, honored, called to be a part of, motivated to be a part of. And we know it's going to be a lot of work, but I can't think of more important work than this.
Lori, how were you part of that conversation, and how is it these people chosen to be part of this committee and to join this call to action?
Yeah, I mean, essentially we were just asked to be by Cindy Parlacone, given the Yates report. And I mean, I can't really say it better than what Danielle just said. I mean, today was our first meeting. And I think, the main thing is like looking at the 12 and what can we tackle right away? Because there's are going to be some, to Danielle's point, that are going to be a bit more complex going forward and take more time. So it was just looking at all of the different 12 recommendations and starting to sort through those on highest priority also, but given that they're all extremely high priority, but what can we implement right away? And then what do we need to dive into and maybe divide the committee up even to start to tackle some of the tasks.
I can't say that. I mean, one of the things that's really important is any committee, and this goes for really any committee, any task force that U.S. Soccer has, it's mandated by law, that a third of any committee has athlete voice representation. And so that's part of both Lori and I are sitting as part of this committee to make sure that we have athlete representation. It doesn't just always mean U.S. women's national team representation. It could be, athletes from the men's team, the para team, the beach team. But I can say that our huge focus, and quite frankly, this came out of USA Gymnastics, and what happened there was, I think NGBs, national governing bodies like US Soccer, like USA Gymnastics, USA Basketball, realized that athlete voice is an essential piece to safety, to successful business, and so this is part of why we are here, having the voice of athletes and representing athletes, and quite frankly, being in communication with athletes about how we need to communicate what their needs, what their desires are. I mean, again, Sandra, you talked about it. The more that we can continue to remind ourselves and put our players at the center of this, it's really easy to get bogged down in the weeds and the details of it, but everything we're doing is player-centered, player-focused. And that's really at the heart of every step, every action, every communication we take.
That's so powerful to hear, and to have two former players as yourselves acting as those voices on the committee is fantastic, because I think it echoes the current voice of the players that's there, because we saw the United States women's national team this Friday when they played England in this first of a pair of friendlies show unity and a common cause between the United States players and the England national team. They wore teal armbands in solidarity with the sexual violence survivors. They gathered together before the game with the Protect the Players banner. It was a very big movement that is now not just involved in U.S. soccer, right? Because other nations and other federations are getting involved with it. Sandra, watching the U.S. England friendly and watching the players come together beforehand and knowing that they were going to wear the teal armbands in solidarity, how powerful was that moment to hear the players give their voice before a friendly the way that they could?
I mean, it was very moving. I think, we saw last year with coming out of games in NWSL how it really is the pitch, right? The pitch is the platform. And we've seen that not primarily from the United States women's national team, that they will try to use the platform that they have in front of them in order to, either show solidarity or get their messaging across. And it was nice to know that even before in the match day, in the lead up and build up to the actual match day, that members of England's women's national team were also expressing solidarity. So I think it was just a matter of what that was going to look like come the actual kickoff. And seeing that and just sort of absorbing the silence of that moment in which everybody was taking a second to observe was very powerful. You had almost 80,000 people show up for a friendly, a friendly against two of the biggest programs in the world. And unfortunately, there was this added layer within all of the anticipation of this game that could have maybe soured some things. But I think we saw come game day how very powerful the vehicle of soccer is, right?
Yeah, and how smart and strong and powerful these women are, but using the vehicle of the great game, as you just mentioned, Sandra. I'm going to use that as a sweet little transition to talk about this game, because USA versus England, the first in a pair of European friendlies for the United States women's national team. It was the world champions against the European champions at Wembley in front of a sold out crowd. Incredible scenes to watch this on television. I can't imagine everyone that was there and how they must be feeling. But England snapping the United States 13-game winning streak. The English side end up defeating the Americans 2-1. All of the goals coming in the first half, but there were a number of players missing. And we had talked about this in our preview, but from England's side, there was no Leah Williamson, no Alessia Russo. From the United States side, no Alex Morgan, no Taylor Korniak, no Mallory Pugh at the last minute in this one. So let's dive right into it. Starting lineup that was rolled out for the United States side: Alyssa Nair in goal. Along the back line, it was Alana Cook, Sofia Huerta, Naomi Girma, and Emily Fox. In the midfield, it was Lindsey Horan, Rose Lavelle, and Andy Sullivan. And then up top, Trinity Rodman gets her very first start with the United States women's national team, Sophia Smith, and then Megan Rapinoe. Did anything stand out, surprise you all from this starting lineup? I know Sandra and I talked about what we wanted to see in this front line. Vlatko not going out for the win, going out to get experience for these players. What's the first thing that stood out to you, Lori, when you read this lineup?
I don't think a ton of surprises in the lineup, given some of the time that Megan Rapinoe had come off the bench, especially with Mal Pugh being gone. So her getting the start, I don't think was like a big surprise. And I mean, I think we've seen the majority. Could have said, surprising that Becky Sauerbrunn didn't get the start. But other than that, I mean, listen, Naomi Girma was dynamite in the back. And so, yeah, not too many surprises in the starting lineup from what we've seen previously, or at least leading up to this game. What were your front three that you were both looking for?
Oh, I wanted Rodman to start.
Yeah, same.
Oh, yeah, fair.
I was just like, enough.
That's a good shout. I mean, I figured she would coming in, just because if you don't have Alex Morgan, and then I mentioned Mal Pugh in a second, I was hoping that she was going to start anyway. So.
Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted Rapinoe, I wanted Smith, and I wanted Rodman up top, and that's what I got.
Yeah, but there was a lot of interchange.
I'm with you. I was totally thrilled to see, Girma get tasked, with the start as well. I think it was a little surprising that it was like a Girma and Cook combination, because it sort of feels like up until this point, it's either been one of these center backs alongside Becky Sauerbrunn. So to see the two of them together in this very big spotlight definitely felt like a bit of a test. But and they got one pretty early on. But I liked the way that duo sort of played themselves back into the game.
Yeah, Girma's good. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it might be time. Like, we might have seen the shift happen, right? I think Becky is obviously a fantastic captain, a fantastic leader, but she's getting older. She's lost a little bit in terms of her speed. And so I don't think like this transition is unwarranted. My gut is that Vlatko wishes he had a little more time. But like, you don't have the luxury of time when you're a national team coach. You don't have like club play where you can work on tactics and all of this. Like, you got to jump in. And so I think it's great that Girma got the start against England in a high profile scenario like this. I think it's the exact test that was needed. I think she answered the call, quite frankly. I thought she was really good in her positioning. And to me, this is probably my center back pairing for the World Cup. It really is. And I don't mean to discredit Becky Sauerbrunn. I just really feel like, the shift has to happen eventually. And I think now might be the time. I think we'll know a little bit more too once we have the World Cup draw and you kind of see some of the competition and who's in group. That might play a little bit more of a role too. But I also think that's perhaps why Megan Rapinoe gets a little bit of the nod. You're like, okay, look, we want a little bit of that leadership. We're not getting it in Becky Sauerbrunn. We have it in Nair and like in goal. So I think all of those factors layer in when you're trying to decide a starting 11, and it's not necessarily as simple as, oh, let's just switch these two, and it's a simple change in that way. I think there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, it's never as simple as you want. I wanted Girma to start in the back. I actually thought she would maybe start alongside Sauerbrunn, but I think that Cook did well in there. I like that combination, but you guys just touched on it. This is at Wembley, a sold-out crowd. Trinity Rodman gets her first start. The back line between Fox, Girma, Cook, Huerta, that group of four, Fox leads them at 22 caps. So this was an incredibly young group. I think the average cap of the starting 11 was like 55 as a group, which is really, really low. And Megan Rapinoe is bringing that average up a lot. But how much does that challenge them against a tough, loud crowd at Wembley? How much does it benefit those young players? Because, hey, we're heading into a World Cup year in just a few months. How much does that benefit these young players?
Oh, that's awesome. But that's also what you dream about. That's the excitement of these are the games you want to play in. And I think that is exceptional, right? This is what we want to see. And this is also why the NWSL is so important, because it's putting Naomi Girma in a position to lead her San Diego Wave team. And then she can step right in to our full women's national team in front of 80,000 people and perform like she did. And so those are why those minutes, those are why those games are so important. But yeah, I mean, this is exciting times. And I think next summer's World Cup is going to be one of the biggest events we've ever seen in sport. That seems, I think, a big thing to say, but I really think it's going to be one of the biggest events we've seen. And so they're going to be playing in front of these crowds. So give these players the opportunity. I mean, they deserve it. And you want to test, right? And see. And I think the same goes with Trinity Rodman. There was a lot of talk because she hadn't had a ton of minutes under Vlatko in front of big crowds, right? That's a goal, in my opinion. She put herself in a great position, and she, seized the day. And I mean, when you look at some of these players that had to step in, and you want them to perform well, they did. And so I think overall, listen, it was a loss, but overall, I thought it was a lot of good takeaways for the U.S. team coming out of this game.
And keep in mind too, like all of these players, especially these young players, they could maybe have 5 or 10 more caps if it wasn't for COVID, right? So there is. And even if you get those caps, like you're playing in empty stadiums, you're playing in a totally different environment. And so there's a little bit of catch up, not that anybody did anything wrong, just as the hand that the world was dealt with COVID. So I think getting younger players these minutes and these caps is critical because there is a developmental loss. We'll never know exactly what it is or how to calculate it, but COVID really did have an impact in terms of the decisions that Vlatko can make in terms of rolling over and bringing new players in, or having to stick with older players and not even having the ability to bring anyone in because no games were happening, right? So I think there's even more weight and importance that are going to be factored into these games leading up to the World Cup, just because, over the course of the last 2 years, that time has been lost.
And also, that's a great point, Danielle. And also the fact that we travel, because US, we don't travel that much. And then to travel, and now we're going to get another game against Spain. I'm sure will look very different, maybe in terms of the environment, but important with this group to see what it's like to travel away, perform with not a lot of preparation time, having to adjust with jet lag and just the time change. So really important aspects, I think, headed into next summer.
No, I'm with you, Danielle. I think it's a really important, point that you bring up about COVID. I just sort of feel like now in 2022, we're starting to see some of these players kind of get back into that more kind of regular, consistent form. I think when we even were looking at the younger players, if we're looking at a player like Smith, who, went pro at a young age, but then obviously 2020 hit the reset button on literally everything around the globe, and just not really sort of having that regular season under her belt during her rookie year, and then watching her in 2021, and we're seeing in 2022 what, you know, regular consistent play could look like for a player of her talented caliber.
So many great takeaways from this England side, but I want to talk about some of the goals that were scored, maybe not scored. Lori, you already said it. The Trinity Rodman goal for you, it's a goal. It's a goal. I'd love to hear that, kind of how the game unfolded for this U.S. side, ultimately losing 2-1 against England. All the goals in the first half, and VAR impacting 2 of the goals in this match. England gets on the board first in the opening 10 minutes. The U.S. then equalizes in the 28th minute on a Sophia Smith goal. That's Smith's 10th goal of the year, 11th career goal in just 24 appearances. I think that she has 10 of her 11 goals this year does feed back to what you were just talking about, Danielle, about how this team couldn't get caps in 2020 with the COVID year and everything that happened. So then it's equalized in the 28th minute. England then takes the lead again. Just 5 minutes later, a penalty kick that was reviewed on VAR. Defender Haley Mace kicks Bronze in the face, and then Stanway scores the PK, and then Rodman gets a goal called offside. VAR review. Laura, you're laughing. What do you think about the PK?
I just love the way you phrased it.
Yeah, that's what I'm laughing at. Kicks her in the face.
Kicks
her in the face. I mean, it also happened like 5 minutes later, it felt like, when they were reviewing the play, but because it was inside the box, it ends up being a penalty kick. But the Rodman goal, that was tremendous. I thought it was a goal as well, Lori.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, this game to me, you can look at some of the stuff where the U.S. can improve for sure. And then you can also look at the areas where the U.S. can dominate. And I think they exposed England in some ways in transition that even England would say that they haven't been exposed, not even in the Euros. So, and one of those was in that goal. I mean, the ability to be able to have free-flowing front line in that play. I mean, I enjoyed watching Sophia Smith play in that central role. We see her more occupy that space with Portland. Obviously a different formation that they play, but for her to be able to roll wide and kind of get on the end of that ball, and then that allows for more fluidity for a Trinity Rodman and then Megan Rapinoe. So I thought it was a fabulous goal, and I think it's a really tight call to make, personally. But I'm also just like, enjoying as a fan and like wanting to call it a U.S. goal. So, but yeah, I mean, I think, listen, there's a lot of takeaways in the fact that, like, you can look at this, if Alex Morgan's is healthy, does she get the start, right? But no, Sophia Smith is in there. It gives them a different look. All of these little elements add to versatility going into the World Cup, which is the ultimate picture and what all of these tests are, to evaluate the team and evaluate players and to see who fits the best. And, to Danielle's point too, I think that is something really important to keep in mind, is that it's not always just like, okay, who's the best 11, right? It's about who's fitting the best in different positions, who's your opposition, and how are we lining up against who we're playing, and who can help us get the result. And I think in a lot of ways it was a lot of fun to watch, and there's some stuff that should be incredibly proud about.
When you look at this side for the U.S. defensively, yes, having a younger back line, but Danielle, you said that Cook and Girma, they're your center backs moving forward, barring any changes that happen. But how do you rate their defensive play against this England side, and what they were faced with in forms of the England attack?
I think they did a fine job. I mean, I think let's be honest, the left back position had a rough day. I mean, between Emily Fox and going out with concussion, and then the Mace penalty kick, like, it was rough, right? I mean, there was some mistakes, but like overall, I guess I feel a little bit like Lori, that yes, the United States is expected to win everything all of the time. And, there's that pressure. And we talk about, what was it, like a 21 game streak that was broken and blah, blah, blah. But I think it was a really great developmental opportunity. I think a lot of questions were answered for Vlatko, which I think is important. And when I look at the back line, sure, there were mistakes made. Like, sure, it wasn't clean. But like we're not used to seeing the United States play against a team this high of caliber consistently. I mean, this is the reality when you get against top 10 teams in the world consistently, is like you are under pressure. And when you look at a young back line that is forced to be playing against a top team in an environment like that, like I'm okay with the progress. I'm okay with, giving them some time to grow and to learn. So was it great? Was it terrible? No, I would probably give the back line B-, C+ in there. Like
putting a grade on it. Respect.
But I'm okay with, like, I'm actually like pleased with the fact that it's a tough challenge and that there's things to grow from. You learn more from the mistakes and the growth in that. And I think it's a critical time for that growth.
Yeah, I think leading up to the game, there was like heavier emphasis on that. I think also considering the week that the players had leading up to this game, right, with everything happening off of the pitch, that there was far less emphasis on so much of like a result, whether it's a winning result or if it was a draw. And there was far more emphasis on the overall event and experience of that actual game as a whole. And, we're not talking about some kind of blowout here by any means. We're talking about a 2-1 loss that was, largely one of the bigger experiences of the careers for some of these players. I think that the coaching staff was perhaps hopeful that they would have gotten some similar experiences during CONCACAF qualifiers with the games in Mexico. And there was, perhaps maybe that final group test, right, against Mexico, where they were the visiting side and the opposition and the crowd was somewhat against them. That was maybe the one time over this calendar year that maybe they sort of had that experience. And I think we heard Andonovski in some of the post game, saying that it actually checked off a lot of boxes that they wanted, to sort of have checked off as they were leaving England. And a big one of those was getting more experience for some of these players, playing in front of that type of crowd and that type of facility, and, being the visiting opposition. And, should they find themselves in difficult game scenarios, how those particular players were going to manage that. And, I think a 2-1 loss, a near 2-2 draw, I don't think is a bad day at the office for that squad.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think sometimes defensively we just think of the back four, and I think in a lot of ways the back four did, a good job. And I also think it also highlighted, if we don't get the press right all the time, when we do, we can score from it. Obviously, picking off the ball, and then that led to Sophia Smith's goal. But if we don't, then teams like England will be able to play through that and then leave us exposed defensively. So I think it highlights, as a collective, the team and how we're defending, choosing our times when to press as a group. If it's not on, perfect time to play against an England team to drop back in more of a middle block, absorb the pressure, and then the team's successful on, let's be honest, on the counterattack. So play for that sometimes, So more so I think it highlights, what does the whole entire team look like defensively, and how are we, how are we dealing with the pressure and the ability for a team like England to be able to play through and play out of the press.
And to be fair, Lori, I mean, I don't think the midfield was great defensively.
No,
That's what we need to talk about before we talk about Spain.
Clear. To be very clear, I think that is an area. I mean, we've talked about it on this show too, just an area to get sorted out, right? Like, what's the best mix? Who's pressing? Because it did look like we were in a bit of a 4-4-2 kind of defensively formation at times, with Rose popping out next to Sophia Smith. But if you don't pinch in, then what does that look like? Because you have players like Kira Walsh, who Danielle and I saw throughout the Euros, just dictate the tempo like you've never seen a number 6 in a long time do. And then you add the Stanway in there. Those players can play, and they had control in a lot of ways of the game.
Yeah.
I was thinking of you, Danielle. I was thinking of you watching this game. I was just like, I think Danielle might have some things to say about that middle third.
Well, yeah, but then you look at the goal that it scored, and it scored from Lindsey Herrera pressure, right? Like, so that's what
I'm saying. So if you get it right, we see that we can get from the goal. And if it's not on, though, then you can drop back. Yeah, exactly.
So what's the biggest thing that you learned about the United States midfield, and maybe what they lacked or what they did well throughout this match?
I mean, I think I take away a little bit Like I need them to focus consistently on their positional play. To me, I think that's still like the fluidity on attack is great, but it's just like you're thinking about the attack, and these players are attacking oriented. When you think of, Lindsey Horan and you think of Rose Lavelle specifically, but you throw in Ashley Sanchez or whomever might be in there, right? Like their strength lies in their attack. And so how you're thinking about your shape defensively, like if you have like a quarter of your brain turned on to the like as a defender, I'm always thinking of, if this goes wrong, how do we solve it? If this goes wrong, how do we solve it? Right. And so as an attacker, how are you like having most of your energy thinking about how to develop the attack, but having a small piece of your brain focused on the worst case scenario? And because it can't just be Andy Sullivan. I think we had the luxury of Julie Ertz like being this destroyer in midfield for so long. And she would just clean up any mess and nobody really had to think about it because she was great at it. One, I think the game is evolving that doesn't allow for one person to be solely responsible for that. And two, I think, Andy Sullivan has a different kind of game. And so collectively, the US needs to think differently about how it manages that space in midfield. And so for me, I think it's time and it takes some more effort, but I still think there's evolution there.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I was going to say resting defense, but Danielle and I have a joke about soccer terms that are thrown around. So as you can see, she's rolling her eyes. Yeah, exactly. So resting defense, people say like, what positions are you in when you're in attack that you can disrupt defensively, right? So I'm like cracking up in my head over here unnecessarily. But yeah, I mean, I agree. And I also think there's, some of the things that we've talked about on here is, what is formationally, does that look like? Do you play with two holding mids or two pivots?
Double pivot.
Yeah, double pivots, exactly. Or not. And then what does that look like just in terms of who's filling in the gaps? Is that an outside back that steps in as a number 6 next to deny any sort of transitional moments? But again, we've talked about that. But those are the things I think that, and they're small details, right? But everybody has to be on the same page because otherwise you do get caught, especially as the teams continue to get better. The game evolves, as Danielle said. So, yeah.
And the reality is, quite frankly, at the international level, you don't have the luxury of one solution typically being the only solution, right? Like sometimes it will have to be an outside back who shifts in. Sometimes it'll have to be a center back who steps up. Sometimes it'll have to be Lindsey Horan or Rose Lavelle who drops in, or some, like, you have to be able to solve all of these problems. And I think the game has evolved in that way. And that is like the best skill that I can tell young players is like, figure out how to solve the problem. It can't just be a coach yelling at you from the sideline saying, run here, do this, do that. Like you have to be able to read and assess and solve the problem. And quite frankly, that's why Naomi Girma is so good at what she does.
Yep.
She can read and assess and then solve the problem before it even really looks like a problem. And that's the next step for this player or these players collectively to have to be able to do that.
It's really fun to watch this team grow and evolve because it was such a young group, but they got significant minutes against high class quality competition against England. A lot to pick apart from that first England match. And we have another friendly coming up for the United States. They take on Spain. I want to talk all about it, pick your brains on everything US versus Spain. And we're going to do it right after this quick break.
It's time to start a new chapter.
Bundle Paramount Plus with Showtime.
Now show me what you can do.
Stream it all in one place for just $7.99 per month.
Oh, hello world.
Your time starts now. Oh, what a shot! Don't forget to land on your feet.
Stream Paramount Plus with Showtime. Just $7.99 per month.
Welcome back to the USWNT Hour. I'm your host, Lisa Roman, joined by Sandra Herrera, Danielle, Slaton, and Lori Lindsey. We're here talking about everything U.S. women's national team, and they take on Spain tomorrow night on Tuesday. Before we jump back into it, I want to remind everyone I've got a $100 Paramount Plus gift card to give away. To enter, all you need to do is subscribe to Attacking Third on YouTube, like this video, and drop your social media handle in the chat without the @ symbol. If you win, you'll get a DM from us, and you'll win that $100 Paramount Plus gift card. let's chat about the U.S. versus Spain. Following the England match, Emily Fox, defender for the United States, the left back, she came out in the 22nd minute of that England match, and she's now ruled out due to concussion protocol. So Black Leninowski has called in North Carolina Courage defender Carson Pickett to replace Fox on the roster. Pickett has one cap with the U.S. that came in June earlier this year, so now she will join the roster. But the United States takes on Spain Tuesday, October 11th. Number 8 ranked team in Spain in the world. So 2 top 10 teams, really tough competition. That kickoff is happening at 8:30 p.m. local time. That'll be 2:30 Eastern time. I can't figure out all the time zones for everyone. I'm just going to stick with 2 of them for now. But it's the 4th meeting all time between these 2 sides, the U.S. and Spain. Spain coming off a 1-1 draw over Sweden over this first match of this FIFA window. But when you look at what the U.S. just did against England, losing 2-1, narrowly tying it 2-2 with that VAR goal called off. And now as they head into a match against Spain, let's talk about the differences first, right? How does Spain play differently versus an England side? Are there any major differences in the style of play that the U.S. players will face going up into this different match away in Spain? Lori, Danielle, Sandra, anything specifically about this Spain side that jumps out to you?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's not the roster that I think they anticipated facing going into this one, right? I think it would be irresponsible of us to come on here and not touch on that a little bit. Unsurprisingly, players in this sport are affected all over the globe, and that includes players in Spain playing for the Spanish Federation. And there are a number of very talented players who are not on this roster. There was 15 players who sent an email to the Federation and wanted to try to be heard. They did that out of privacy, and they wanted to try to maybe, facilitate a dialogue. And the Federation spun that a bit on them. Yeah. And a lot of these players are not participating in this current international window. So it's a different looking roster that the United States is going to be going up against in the meantime. But this is also a roster that just, like you said, Lisa, got a 1-1 draw against Sweden. So I would imagine that there is still going to be a certain level of competitiveness to this match. I don't anticipate anything otherwise.
Go for it.
I'll say, I mean, I think, the one thing that we expect is this is a team that's going to want to dominate possession in Spain. And we know that, even with a considerable amount of players missing, that is in their DNA, right? To keep the ball, keep it moving, get combination plays, right? Overloads in different areas. And I think that's an important test as well for a team like the U.S. because as of late, outside the England match, I think we're the ones that have had the ball the most. So what does that look like? How do we deal with that? Again, I think it's this kind of similar questions, maybe not as direct. I don't think they're going to be able to be as threatening. That's one thing that was a talking point in the Euros, was not having a true number 9, a player that was going to constantly threaten the 2 center backs or the back line of the opposition to get in behind. I would expect that's probably the same coming into this match against the U.S. So that'll be different versus the England. But I think, the same questions you can ask is, when we press, are we going together? Because that'll be a team that for the most part will look to try to play out and try to expose us centrally to then be able to get into the attack with numbers. And then also if we don't decide to press, can we stay back as a unit and then look to see if we can punish on the counterattack? And what does that look like? And what is the partnerships? I'll be curious about the starting lineup. I expect there to be some rotations, right? And who gets more numbers? I mean, who gets more minutes? Which is always valuable and exciting. And I think just poses a little bit of a different test, but I think the idea that the U.S. is going into this game to continue to evaluate, continue looking to get a win in this game is all the same.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing that stands out, like the United States matches up well against England. They're both similar in the way that they want to play. Physical, they like to be in transition. The England maybe not quite as transitional as the United States, but like that's a fun matchup. You're in Wembley, like there's all of the things. Like playing against Spain, and I actually felt this was the same way when England had to play against Spain in the Euros. I think they made in the quarterfinals. Is that right? Yeah, the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Like, this game is a grind. Like, this game for the United States, like, we like to be in possession. We like to be flying. We like to be like pressing here. And I'm telling you, if you get one person pressing and the 9 other don't follow, Spain can like skin you. Like, they will pick you apart. And a game against Spain is like, you have to be prepared to suffer. Like, it's just not the way you love to play. It might be, as a fan, a really fun game to watch and beautiful soccer, but when it comes to like having to defend for 70% of the time, it comes for having to stay connected and chase and pick and choose your moments. Like, that's not the free-flowing style we've become accustomed to see. And that's not how the competition usually stacks up against the United States. So when you think about this game, like, I'm really eager to see what it will look like, especially as you guys have mentioned, these 15 players that are missing for Spain. Like, I still think it'll be a decent side that we'll see. Lori, to your point, I still think that despite the absence of these 15 players, the style will not change. The identity of Spanish soccer will be ever present. But I'll be really curious to see if they can move the ball as effectively against the United States, and if they can basically execute the way that they want to. Because even when we look back to the Euros, the absence of Jenny Hermoso and Alexia Putellas, like, that had a real significant effect on the success of Spain in the Euros. And now you deplete that even more. And I think it's going to be a big challenge for them. But I didn't see I just saw the results. I didn't see the actual game between Spain and Sweden. So not really sure how that played out, like from a technical and tactical standpoint. But that result is significant. That's a good result for probably both teams. And so that can't be discounted either.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the U.S. side and how they are going to have that defensive mindset, even when they do have the ball, because Spain can punish a team with their possession and the way that they can move the ball, so technically skilled. When you look at the United States midfield, what player rotation do you want to see from there? Because I know I want to see Ashley Sanchez get significant minutes for this United States side. I want to see what she can do alongside a Rose Lavelle. I think Vlatko Andonovski calling in a player like Sam Coffey deserves some significant minutes in the midfield, but player personnel wise, who do you want to see get more minutes in this match against Spain? Maybe that didn't in this first match against England. Lori, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Coffey is one that I would like to see in there. She's a player that I have been high on the entire season, and I think she's done incredibly well with Portland. And we saw her come in, and I think one of the first touches of the game was solid and with confidence against England when she did come in those last minute. So I would like to see what it's like. And when we saw her play almost either a full 90 or almost full 90 against Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And so this will be a different test than that. And, one of the things we've talked a lot about defense on this podcast today, but I would like to see a Sam Coffey get on the ball, right? And so once we do win it with the U.S., a player, even if it's Andy, then a player that wants to get on in that number 6 position and really start to move the ball around. Because I don't think we've seen that. I think that is one of the things that a lot of us have been wanting to see, a little bit more dictating of the tempo, moving the ball, deciding rhythm setter, right, of when we're going to go a bit more at speed, when we're going to slow things down. And there could be an opportunity for that against this Spain team when we do win the ball. So I don't know if, I'll be stoked for whoever plays, right? Yeah. Like it's more about like, I think the way that we play is what I'll be looking for and who can kind of put that stamp on that. And I think that is the next element. I mean, we know that we can hit in the break and in the counter, and we saw how dangerous we can be. And I think there has been question marks on when a team maybe essentially does drop back a little bit. How do we keep and how do we break down that defense? And I'm not so sure. I'm with Danielle. I didn't see the game against Sweden. I'm not so sure that they'll just drop back, but I don't think if they can't win in the press immediately, Spain, and win it back, I do think collectively they will drop in somewhat to at least give us an opportunity to see if we can play. And so I'll certainly be looking for that.
If and when Spain does drop in, what do you want to see from the U.S. attack? How do you want to see them combine and go forward if they do have a little bit of space?
I mean, I think the width becomes incredibly important, right? I mean, and I think that's a real strength of this team. You see Mallory Pugh, you see Sophia Smith doing their thing. I have to say, like, I actually don't want to see a lot of different changes. I'm ready to see some consistency out of Vlatko Andonovski. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that that means we don't have a couple of tweaks here and there. I mean, obviously, like, the question to me is, do you start Haley Mace? Do you put Crystal Dunn back there? Like, how many minutes? Like, I think it's a load management thing more than anything with Crystal. Do you put her at left back? Do you put her in the midfield? Everyone's going to like debate, where's the best position? Who knows? I don't know yet, but really, like, to me right now, it's about getting her minutes and healthy and like getting some repetition under her belt. And so to me, okay, maybe you put her out there a little bit, or probably start Haley Mace and bring Crystal Dunn potentially on for that. But I don't know that I really want to see a ton of changes other than a couple. And I think, I don't know, that's the bandwagon that I'm on now of it's time to start solidifying who's going to be there. I mean, obviously there's still missing pieces, right? I mean, there's no Pugh. You kind of can plug her in at the left winger, most likely. Maybe, but like even at a striker position, is it going to be Alex Morgan? Is it going to be Kat Macario? Is she going to be back? Is it going to be Trinity Rodman? Like, so give Trinity like a little bit of a run here. Like, give her a chance to like get some confidence, as opposed to being like, you're in, you're out. Now you have to be a starter. Now you have to shift mentally and come off the bench. And I don't know. That's where my gut's leaning today, at least.
Yeah, I'm with you in your gut, Danielle. Honestly, I just don't know if it's a rare opportunity to have a 2-game series in Europe like this. So why not, have a little bit of continuity there? Calling in Pickett, and in light of Fox Ups, I'm a little bit curious if there's intent there, to start this player. Which, listen, we've been covering Carson Pickett all through the regular season with the Courage. So yes, I would love to see Pickett fly down the flank. Yeah, of course. But I don't know, if we actually will see that happen. But I would like to see some carryover from what we saw in that match against England in this match against Spain.
Yeah, I agree. I want Trinity Rodman up top for sure. I want to get her some consistency. And I think the way that she played against England, getting what would be the equalizer in that match against England, proves that she's ready for this, and that give her that confidence, as you mentioned, Dee, and just keep running with her. I'm excited for this match against Spain. I want to hear final score predictions from all three of you about U.S. versus Spain. Final thoughts on anything else you want to add in here. Laura, you first. Final thoughts on this episode before we close out, and of course your score prediction for U.S. Spain.
Yeah, I'm just excited for another game and a different opponent for this U.S. team, and for all the things that we've already said. But God, a score prediction. Oh, geez. I mean, I actually have no clue. I don't even know where to begin in a score prediction. I mean, I can throw something out, but yeah.
Have fun with it. Be like touchdown, 7-0.
Yeah. I think we're seeing some fun performances, right? I'd like to see more goals from Sophia Smith, from Trinity Rodman. So I mean, I don't know. 2 or 3-0 US. That's what I'm going with.
Oh, I love that.
Right on. Got a shutout.
2-1.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I don't really know why. It just feels right. So
what did you say? 2-1. Yeah, fair.
US. And I think it'll again. I'm just really curious how the United States will be able to break down Spain, how to weather their possession. I think it's a really good, different test. And I'll actually be interested to see, given all of the stuff that's been going down in Spain, will we see the teal armbands again? What will that look like? I think, obviously the Spanish players are in it. I mean, a line has been drawn, right, in Spain. And so there's a lot. And my heart goes out to all of the players in Spain as they navigate whatever it is that's going down there, as we feel the same way here in the United States. It's a hard time in U.S. soccer right now. It's a hard time in global women's soccer right now. But I just keep thinking like let's just get all the virus out. Like, let's get it out right now. And let's find a way to actually like repair this broken arm instead of putting a Band-Aid over it.
Yes, really said so nicely. Thank you so much, Danielle, for that sentiment for sure. Sandra, score prediction? You got one against Spain?
You're gonna have me do a score prediction after Danielle just carried us on.
Yes, I want to know your score prediction.
Yeah, maybe I'll be bold too and say shutout, but only 2-0.
Yeah, I'm thinking 2-0 too.
Trinity gets that banger back.
Yes, I love to hear that from Sandra about Trinity. I'm with you, Sandra. 2-0. Trin gets one. Let's get Sophia Smith one too. I really appreciate it. Reminder, you can watch the U.S. versus Spain Tuesday, October 11th, 8:30 local, and that kicks off at 2:30 Eastern time. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening and joining us today. Danielle, Lori, Sandra, thank you for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third for more. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does really help us out. And you can subscribe to us on YouTube to catch all of our interviews and get alerts for when we go live, youtube.com/Attacking Third. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Have a great day.